Well, hello everyone to the November installment of the Sales Nerd live stream. I am Carole Mahoney, your host, founder of Unbound Growth, and author of the best-selling book Buyer First: Grow Your Business with Collaborative Selling. I am thrilled to be joined by my friend Paula White. Paula, say hello. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi there, Paula White. I am just left my 30-year corporate career about 4 years ago and decided to dive into communication as a way of really building revenue. So I am a 2-time best-selling author, keynote speaker, and a generalist in having fun.
I don't know if I would say that you're a generalist in having fun, because you have a lot more fun than most people that I know. So you're kind of an expert at the having fun part, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Another topic for another day.
That's right.
And I know that we're Thanksgiving is here in the US is on Thursday. And so my burning question for you, Paula, is what is your favorite Thanksgiving dish?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. So, I love dark meat turkey, but, to me, there is nothing better than mashed potatoes with gravy on top of it.
I didn't expect that as an answer. I am also a dark meat fan myself. In fact, I'm like the first one to go for the leg and run away with it.
Yeah.
But my favorite dish, and it's surprising to most people, is butternut squash. Like, no matter, there's no way you can mess it up for me. I just love butternut squash on Thanksgiving, and I will end up taking all of the leftovers of it home because nobody else wants it, and I'll turn it into soup and everything else. So I'm excited for that.
Well, and mashed potatoes, you don't make them like you make them on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Thanksgiving mashed potatoes with that turkey gravy.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I have been talking a little bit for, I don't know, a couple of years now, and we keep kind of going round and round about this topic of listening.
Yeah.
And I talk about active listening quite a bit, but you really opened my eyes to some of the things when you talk about listening. So I'm wondering if you can just give our audience a sense of, like, why is listening something that's so important to you, that you've written books on it, you do workshops on it, etc.
Well, interesting, because everyone thinks of listening as a skill, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It is a mindset. We listen to people the way we listen to music. So if you think of listening as a mindset, and I'm going to say this going into Thanksgiving, I'm probably going past getting ahead of myself on this, but think of how many times you zone out when you're listening to people.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. So it's really got to be a mindset. And if we have a framework around it, which I have a framework that goes with this, it really sets that intention of what zone you need to be in to listen to that person or the people that you're with. Mm-hmm. So if we can think of listening as a mindset and not a skill, then people are more apt to understand it, because, we already know how to listen. We know how to actively listen. But active listening is only one component of it. There's background listening and reflective listening, and what I actually upgraded from active listening to conscious listening.
And I've even heard you describe it as intentional listening, listening with intention. And this is so my jam, because, we talk so much about how do we learn new skills? How do we get, different habits and behaviors in place? And, the idea of changing our behaviors or change in general is like, we automatically start to resist it. Like, why do I need to be the one to change? And why do I need to do this now? But what I think a lot of us lose sight of is that in order to change a behavior, we first have to recognize the beliefs that are causing the behavior, rather than just trying to put a Band-Aid on it or medication on it or something. It's why so many people are unsuccessful in losing weight, for example. So what are the mindsets behind listening that we're not taking into account, or that we need to have but don't have?
Well, good question. The first mindset is how do I want to state this? What environment are you in? Are you in an environment that you need to listen? Or are you in an environment where It's okay to listen, people in the background, you're moving along doing your stuff. Or are you in an environment where it's a critical conversation and you need to get the details on that beautiful sales, that sales contract that you want?
Mhm.
What environment are we listening from? Then the other, another thing we want to look at is how curious are you? How curious are you being in actually listening? Are you taking awareness of when you zone out and zone back in? Because we all do. We all listen to people, and somewhere along the line, it either gets boring or we get lost.
Mhm.
Most of the time, it's we get lost in the conversation. Somebody has said something, and we haven't been able to chime in to ask, what does that mean? So rather than asking what that means, we tend to say, well, I'll figure it out later, and then go on to our own mindset.
Or like I've often done this where I don't necessarily understand what they're saying, but I'm going to just keep letting them go and maybe I'll figure it out by the time they get to the end.
Correct. And so by the time you're figuring it out, you're in your own head, and
Right.
you probably have missed so much of what they're saying that you're not going to be able to figure it out.
Mhm.
So taking that opportunity to say, just a moment, I need to go back to where you were, that really shows an intention of listening and wanting to be understood. Understanding is the biggest thing. I think a lot of people, when we talk about mindset too, Carole, is a lot of people are in this empathy phase, right? We have to listen with empathy. We have to listen, be empathetical.
Mm.
I disagree. Not everyone is empathetic. Um, I I believe that we should listen to care, but we should listen with to understand,
Mhm.
right? And that is part of empathy. But let's take empathy out of it because it's such a buzzword right now, and start listening to understand.
Well, then you can't get to empathy without understanding.
That is correct.
Okay.
That
And
is correct.
and like I'm kind of like working backwards of this in my mind. Like, what is the environment that you're in? What level of the curiosity do you have? Because you have to have curiosity in order to be willing to understand.
Right.
It's like everybody wants to jump to the active listening empathy part without really considering those first three things that you just mentioned.
Correct. And if you don't have those first three things, then you're just going to be sitting there
Shaking your head going, I don't know what they're saying, but I'm trying to listen.
or nodding or
And not even know why you're nodding. Yeah,
have the
exactly.
bobblehead going. Yeah.
I tend to do the bobblehead thing. Yeah.
I,
So then what I'm hearing you say that the difference between active listening and conscious or intentional listening is the mindset specifically of understanding the environment you're in. How do you all right, I'm going to ask this question. It's probably going to sound bad. How do you get yourself to be curious about something that you maybe don't care about?
no, I completely understand that. Like I said, we listen to people the way we listen to music,
Mhm.
right? There's some genres we just don't want to hear, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good way to put it. There
Okay.
are some genres or some of our favorite songs that we skip by because we've heard it so much,
Mhm.
right? Been there, done that. There are some things that we listen to just to have background music so that we can focus.
Mhm.
When we get to a point where there is something that we're not connecting with, and this point is exactly where I was 3 weeks ago. I was with a group of headbangers, and we were on a cruise, and I don't listen to headbanger
Yeah, I'm
music.
not thinking headbanger when I look at you right now. No.
Right. But I had to go in because I wanted to understand their community, understand who they are, why they listen to this, what is it that drives them.
Mm.
And I connected with the guitar riffs. The
Okay.
guitar riffs in Headbanger is amazing.
Yeah.
It is, they are just, do, 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 on and on. I don't understand the lyrics, and that's okay.
Wait, there's lyrics?
Yeah, there are lyrics. Lyrics!
Yeah, I know the growl and all of that stuff too, but I was like, wait, those are lyrics?
Those are lyrics.
Sorry
And
for you headbangers out there. I have my own. I have my Metallica moments as well, and I don't even know if that's considered headbanging anymore. It's probably more pop now, but yeah. So the lyrics and
so you really need to connect with something.
yeah.
If there is something or a topic you don't care about, or something along those lines, try and find something in the conversation to connect with, or the person to connect with. Once you find that connection, then listening becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to that point where listening in our mind due to a connection, then we're going to listen to understand.
And I think we've heard this, like, Cubby has talked about this, seek to understand before you try to be, seek to understand before you want to be understood.
Correct.
It's not like we haven't heard these things before. So what makes it so difficult for people to listen? And I'm raising my hand on this because I talk about active listening all the time. And you ask my husband, I don't listen to him at all. Like he comes home and he starts talking to me, and I still have a million things that are racing through my head at the end of the day, and I'm still answering emails in my mind. And I have to make a really conscious effort to try to be curious about his day. He works in nuclear submarines, and so it all goes right over my head anyway. But
Right.
I want to be curious because I want to know, like, about him, like how is he feeling and those types of things. And so, got any tips for me about how I can get better at that part of thing? I know number one is don't have your cell phone in your hand, because he knows as soon as my cell phone is in my hand, I'm not listening.
That's it. That's one thing. Interestingly enough, so there are the 4 zones of listening, and I'll go over those very briefly, right? Background zone, and each zone has its positive and negative. And I'm just going to do this at a very high level. We go deep into this in the workshops, but background zone is really a zone where you need to focus. So you intentionally put yourself into that zone. Now, when you're in that zone and people are coming at you to try and talk to you, we typically have a canned answer or a canned response. And mine is, that's nice. That when I say that, I know I'm not listening. So find your canned response so that when you hear yourself say it, you're intentionally going, oh, I just didn't hear. I wasn't listening. Or just say to the person coming in, hey, listen, I need 15 minutes to finish what I'm doing. Yeah. Make that background zone, your personal zone. Reflective zone is really nostalgic. It's like the nostalgic music. It's really, we've been there, we've done that. People are talking to us about a problem that they may have, and we're going, we want to fix it right away. We want to problem solve it right away. Guilty. Rather than letting somebody figure it out on their own, and just being that ear and maybe throwing out a tip or two.
Which requires a crap ton of patience.
It does. It does. And that's one tip that I will tell you, is to have more patience. But how do you get there?
Yeah.
Active listening, and I think this is where you and I, we spend most of our day, but we still have biases. We still have listening blockers. There are 15 listening blockers out there in the world right now. We need to understand what those
cell phones being the number one, I'm guessing.
What's that?
Cell phones being the number one blocker.
Cell phones, and actually our own mindset, coming up with what we want to say before we say it. Where we are trying to proactively head off a conversation before listening to what it is. Where, and this is a good one where we need to practice the most in our day-to-day. But when we're in a sales environment, a critical conversation, something that really demands 100% listening, that is where conscious listening comes in.
Okay.
And Carole, this is where I can tell you the best tip that I can give you is to take one of your favorite songs and listen for how many instruments are being played in it.
Oh boy, that's going to be a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, my favorite song is Learning to Fly by Pink Floyd.
There you
So
go.
now I'm going to have to go back and start listening to it
Yep.
in that context.
And you need to listen from that context. Listen for, because what you're going to find yourself doing in a mindset is you're going to find yourself blocking everybody else out, blocking everything out, and 100% focused on how many instruments can I hear.
Yeah.
So when you're with your husband, you're going to ask yourself, what is the one thing that I can find out about today that's different from yesterday?
Okay. I'm going to practice that tonight.
Try that. And also when you're at Thanksgiving, go around, count how many times you zone out, and also go around and ask everyone the same question, whether it is, what do you want for Christmas? Or what lights are you going to go see? Or, Christmas lights, or, what are you doing for Christmas? Or like you asked earlier, what is your favorite Thanksgiving food? Or what is your favorite Christmas food? Then 15 minutes after you finish that, then go around and ask them again, but you give the answer, did I get this right?
Huh. Okay.
And I would only start with maybe 5 people, then go to 10. I wouldn't do a whole room at once. If you're a big family like my husband, who has 9 siblings and all the families,
Wow.
don't do it then. But take 5 to 10 people and just go ask one question. Walk around, not all together, but at different spaces. And take in mind where you listen to them, the environment. Were you by the sofa? Were you in the kitchen? Were you here? And kind of connect their answer with that.
Oh, that's interesting, because we learned that in public speaking training that, sometimes you can tie to remember what it is that you're supposed to say at certain places by being at certain places on the stage, that it's like this physiological reaction to trigger your memory. So it works in everyday life is what I'm hearing you say.
It does.
That's so cool.
It does. Okay.
All right, I'm going to try that. And I think I'm going to challenge myself in that, because we have like 20 people that are going to my sister's house for Thanksgiving, and half of it's my family, half of it is her in-laws family. So I'm going to try it on the people I don't know very well, which is the in-laws, because I think that's going to be the challenge for me.
Well, not only will it be the challenge, but it'll also get you connected with them in a different way that you've ever been connected before.
Right, exactly. Because I don't really know what it is that I have in common with them yet. And it's been a few years.
Yeah.
They're not listening to this. They're like later on, yes, I'm all going to be experimenting on you, Dupuy family.
That's right.
So how did you get into this work? Because I know that you said you had left corporate America. You went and really started your own practice and firm around this. Like what compelled you to focus here?
What I found as I was climbing the corporate ladder, and trust me, it took me some pivots to get here, right? Communication was always number one, but communication was so broad to me that I couldn't dial down what is it that really has inspired me to lead a sales team from 34 people, multi-million dollars in sales, and still growing every year. How did that happen? What was the secret sauce? And it really came to hit me that the secret sauce was listening to my people and listening to them to understand. So how do we do that as we grow climb the corporate ladder, when everything is so numbers focused, so sales focused, so results focused, so data focused? We just can't let our people get lost. And building that trust, as you know, listening is the number one way to build that trust. And so I started understanding this process of music and listening, because music is a universal language.
Yeah.
I kind of met melding the two together. And it really came out with talking to a neuroscientist and a musician and a psychologist and myself. And we just kind of formulated all of these zones, and came up with that it is a mindset. It's not a skill.
Mindset always comes before skill set.
Always.
You can't have one without the other. It's just,
No.
it's, you can fake it maybe for a little while, but long term, you're not going to be able to. And it's interesting too, because we have so many ways to listen now, right? Like we have social media, we have so many ways to communicate, but for all of the noise, more and more people don't feel like they're being heard.
There is too much noise in the world, Carole, and I've done an article on that on my LinkedIn as well, that there is just way too much noise, and we need to block some of that out to intentionally connect with people. Because if we're not connecting, then we're not building trust, we're not building relationships, and we're not building sales.
And you can't have change without any of those things, right?
That's
and
right.
we're in a constant state of change, and it feels like sometimes we're just kind of going through the motions and seeing what's going to happen next. And that's one of the things that I found, absolutely listening and feeling like you're being understood is the critical element for the building of trust to begin with. And it's
the foundation.
It's also one of the major skills lacking in sales today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in just anywhere communications, but sales is that one area that we can actually quantify all of these soft skills and how they play out into the results that we get, which is why I love doing this kind of work, because we can take the ethereal and we can make it quantifiable. And that means that we can then study it and we can start to see how can we do this in a much better way. But it doesn't limit ourselves to sales. It's part of our everyday human functions. Like, me talking about trying to listen to my husband better, or even my kids better. And yet this is something I teach to salespeople every day. Yet it also is still something that I recognize I struggle with.
I still listen to learn every day, because that is my job. It's what I love to do. And if you really think about it, our customer service people should be listening to their customers.
Yeah. Our
customers may not be listening to us as we're giving a solution. Right. And so it goes all up and down our whole life. It's, how we work this and understand that when you go into a setting, what zone are you going to be in? What zone of listening is apropos for where you need to be?
What do you think is the thing that gets in the way the most for people?
What I think one of the listening blockers that I think gets in the way is our biases.
Of course. You have do you have an example from your headbangers?
Exactly. So our biases, but let's take that off the board. Okay. I think that we all believe that we are listening.
Yeah. We'd like to believe that we're listening, but then when we're put to the test, maybe not so much.
Right. And, when you think about actually putting down in those 10 questions in the listening quiz, you find out you don't know, you're not listening. So we all go in with an intention to get the job done, rather than with an intention to understand and hear what people are saying and what their needs are and what we want, not what we want, what they really want from us.
Yeah. I often say to the sales teams that I train that if your thoughts are racing in your head, the thoughts in your head are louder than the voice of the person who's talking to you, you're never going to be able to listen. And so being able to regulate your own emotions and control that to a certain degree is what's going to really enable you to be a good listener, a conscious listener, an intentional listener, an active listener, whatever subjective you want to put in front of that. You can't do that if you're wrapped up in your head. So do you have tips for people how to get out of their own head? Like even in the moment when you find yourself like, okay, I realized I don't think I heard what the last 3 sentences were. Like, how do you make sure you bring yourself back? How can you stay in that zone?
Interestingly enough, that is a there's several ways that you can do that, but as we're talking about it, it seems so simple. Take a drink of water, pause for a moment and say, I'm sorry I didn't hear you. And I know that may sound like it's going to be rude, but I would rather somebody tell me that they didn't hear what I was saying until right then, before I get to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I've
Yeah.
gotten to the end of the whole story and I'm waiting for the punchline, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Is it actually helpful to repeat back what you think you heard? We see that a lot in sales training. Does that actually help? And does it help the other person feel like they're being heard?
Yes and no. And I'm going to say
My
yes.
husband's favorite answer. And I'm like, that's not an answer.
I know. I know. Yes, it does help the person that is listening,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't help the person that is communicating. One,
Okay.
because we all know that this is a tip and trick, right? So we all know that when I say, Carole, you just asked me a question. Does it help? Everyone starts to roll their eyes and they get into their own mind again
Okay.
because it's so oftenly used.
Yep.
That I would almost tempt you to say, give me a moment and let me write that down. I would rather you write it down than repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then at the end, recap. Okay, so what I've heard is this.
Yeah.
Not during the conversation. And if there's something missing, then you can take it from there.
Okay. Because a lot of times the way that I'll do it is, are you telling me that, and then repeat back what they said, which means X, or what I'm hearing you say, or it sounds like this is a real challenge for you in these areas because of these particular things, so that I can basically make sure that I'm understanding and hearing what they said. So but the just kind of rote repeating back what they said doesn't necessarily have that impact.
Okay. It does not have that impact. Now, if in a sales environment, as you and I both know, that if you're trying to get what their pain point is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're repeating back what their pain point is, they may automatically say, no, that's not what I meant, but it really is.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to be careful with that, right? And I love the way that you kind of framed it in this. So this, not so this is what I'm hearing, or this is what I heard you say, but I'm thinking, help me understand, is this what I heard? Right.
Yeah.
You bring it back on yourself.
Yeah.
And not the person that you're listening to.
Right. And sometimes I'll use the phrase, are you really saying what I think you're saying, type of a thing? And they're like, yeah, I really am. It's that bad.
Just like when I said I disagree with empathy, you went,
wait a minute, what do you mean you disagree with empathy? Again, it is the catchphrase, like emotional intelligence and so forth. So I love the tips that you gave about the Thanksgiving question. Like, find that question, and I'm going to try it on the 5 people who I think I know the least in my other side of the family, and remembering the place in the room that I asked them that particular thing. What do you think about even going back later and saying, so can you tell me a little bit more about, I've got to think of what the question is going to be, but a little bit more about this particular thing? Does that kind of help continue that understanding and learning?
Oh, it does. It always does. So tell me a little bit more. You talked about butternut squash. You make soups and you do that. Tell me, what kind of, how do you put that into a soup when it's already cooked?
Yeah. Honestly, it's you just add milk and water to it. You're just watering it down even more so I can stretch it out even longer.
Yeah, there you go.
But I literally have 3 butternut squashes coming to my house, one that I'm taking to there, and the other 2 that are going to be pretty much just for me for the next 3-4 weeks. This has been so helpful, honestly, because I feel like I'm a relatively good listener, and I'm always telling my salespeople and trainers that, we need to listen to understand, but sometimes even just knowing it and saying it doesn't mean that you're actually doing it.
Doing it.
So understanding the environment, really trying to be more curious about like where that comes from and understanding. I mean, those are the things that actually lead to empathy.
It really does. And understanding what your canned response is.
Yeah.
If you know what your canned response is, then automatically when that triggers, you come back and go, oh, I wasn't there. And then the one thing I want to tell you to do, Carole, and I'd love to get your results. Figure out how many instruments are playing in your Pink Floyd song.
Oh, I'm doing that at lunch today for sure.
And then Google it, how many instruments were played. So, then
well, the funny thing is though, the first song that I learned on guitar was Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here.
Yeah.
And I was doing it by ear. I didn't have the tablature music in front of me. And I struggled with it so much because I was like, all right, this is one guitar. And I'm trying to how do they get through all of these different pieces and parts? And it wasn't until I really started diving, like what you're calling the kind of listening. It wasn't until I really started listening intently to it that I realized there's 3 guitars that I'm trying to put into one guitar.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's why this is so hard right now, because I'm trying to play 3 guitars at once. But that's also how we sometimes act in sales conversations or any conversation where, we think we're listening and we're hearing this particular thing. But then when we really start slowing ourselves down, reducing the distractions and just slow, I went through it like measure by measure on when we had cassette tapes back then, you stop and pause.
Stop and pause.
And then I realized, I'm like, oh my God, there's more than one guitar playing and it's overlapping. And then when I looked at the tablature music and realized it was 3 different guitar parts, I was like, well, that makes a whole lot more sense now.
It does. And listening is it is very complex.
Yeah.
It is so complex. And taking these things and listening from a zone perspective at least get you in the right zone for the right purpose and the right intention.
Yeah.
Then you go deeper.
One of the things that I love to do lately, I live in the middle of the woods on a lake. And this is the time of year where it is just so quiet. All of the summer people have gone. It's just the people who live here. And I will go for at least once a day. I'll go for a 20 or 30 minute walk with the dog without headphones on and just listen to the sounds of nature. And it is amazing how much you can hear when you're just letting yourself absorb it. So that when a gunshot goes off, because it's hunting season here, it's just like everything startles. The birds go nuts. Like everybody stops and looks like, where does that come? Everybody, meaning me and the birds.
Yeah.
And look how the squirrels stop moving. Like everything freezes for that second, and then it goes right back into like the normal sequence of things. So,
oh wow,
I think that's another way that we can really start. Like again, we create an environment where you can actually dive into that, and you're curious about that. Like you hear something moving through the leaves, and you're wondering, okay, based on this leaf sound, how big is this? Is it a bear, a deer, or is it just a chipmunk? Like sometimes it's hard to tell.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Paula, thank you so much for all of this. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about this or take your listening quiz?
Oh, you can email me at pw@paulaswhite.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, Paula S. White. And love to, and if you get anything, Carole, send it my way and we'll get the quiz out to people if they want it. And it's just a short 10 questions.
Okay. I'm going to take it myself. I think I need to do that.
Take it and let me know how you do. If you score 100, you're good at listening.
Okay. Well, I kind of need that gold medal to tell me that I did good. So for all those of you listening, follow Paula S. White on LinkedIn, connect with her, let her know that you heard on the Sales Nerds live stream podcast, whatever we're going to call this thing, and ask her about the listening quiz and see if you can practice some of these things on your family and friends this Thanksgiving and see how you can carry it into your everyday. And I am willing to bet that you'll have deeper, richer conversations and relationships as a result.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much, Paula. Bye, everyone.